Hello and welcome to the Road to Financial Freedom, a podcast that allows experts to share their stories and secrets to unlocking their financial independence. This podcast is brought to you by CamaPlan, a self-directed IRA administrator located in Ambler, PA, that's focused on educating investors with different ways to grow their retirement savings faster through alternative investments. And again, we're coming to you remotely this week for our podcast. I'm Jess Jones. I am a team member at CamaPlan. I'm host of this podcast. And today's guests are the brains, hearts, and souls behind Investor Hospitality. Their companies, Accountable Equity and Viva Mei Hospitality, have developed and stood up exceptional resort properties and growing world-class operational teams. This husband and wife and business partner duo have not only built numerous businesses and brands in the hospitality industry, but have also built a large, loving family of 10 children. Please welcome Josh and Melanie McCallen to the podcast. Thank you guys for joining us today.
Hi, Jess. Thank you for having us.
Yes,
that was
absolutely
an incredible
great
intro.
Yeah, Jess is good at this. She's a pro.
Aw, thanks, guys. Well, I have so much I want to discuss with the both of you, so let's just dive right in. I just want to start with you both telling us a little bit more about each of your backgrounds, so where you were born, grew up. I am a sucker and a lover of romantic comedies, so I'd love to know where and how you met, went to school, what you studied, all of those things.
Do I start? Am I going to start?
Yeah, let's start. I mean, so this is the story of how we get to, be building funds and working with hundreds of investors, but it starts off differently, doesn't it?
Yeah. So I was a military kid. My dad had us moving around all over the place. And when it got time to choose college, it was a little bit question mark, like, where do I go? I don't know where my parents are going to be. So anyhow, my grandparents live in Buffalo, New York. So we said, let's choose something that's within a driving radius of there. And we found a really wonderful college in Ohio. Just kind of wanted something small. And I knew since the time that I was knee high to a grasshopper, I wanted to be a teacher. So that was an easy thing. And this was a great school to get an excellent education in education. So I went there and
Franciscan.
Yep. It's called Franciscan University of Steubenville. Just like my kids say, you went to a place that's named Steubenville. Like,
yeah, it's a strange name.
It's a strange name. But anyhow, that is where we met. Josh,
you know what? The first house. I'm sorry. I'm
stealing
I'm stealing some of your thunder.
You're missing all the romance if we just jump right to the first house. So we met there. We were just friends for a while. While we were sophomores in college, we went and studied at a small campus that was part of our university in Austria.
In the foothills of the Alps.
In the foothills.
Unbelievable.
It was an incredible semester. And we didn't start dating. We became, better friends, I would say, at that point. But it was when we came back from there that we actually started dating. And anyhow, do you want to jump?
Well, no, I mean, I love this lady. So we got married young. We were 22. We got married right out of college. There's this old saying that we think is hilarious, but Melanie, it was true. Like after a few months of dating, I'm like, wait, it seems like we're going to be together forever, but we just need time to pass so you can believe it, right? So we time has passed.
Good at sales from the beginning.
Time has passed, and we are now in our 23rd year with 10 children. So we were onto something, I think, at the first few months there. But Melanie has this horrible story she has to share about we get out of school. We're both trying to be teachers at first. She obviously was very successful. I learned quickly I wanted to go into business, but I was a teacher, and we go back to get a master's degree. And I say, Melanie, it's time to buy a house. And we were like 24. Okay, so we're young. We're going to buy a house, and you could just take it from there. This is actually very compelling about how it all kind of came about as partners, business partners.
So we actually went back to Steubenville for a master's degree. It actually has an incredibly cheap housing market. Yeah, so I just thought, wow, this is incredible. We didn't think we'd be able to afford a house coming right out of college. This is going to be great. And I had the 3-bedroom white picket fence concept in my mind. And we've always loved fixer-uppers, so that didn't scare us. But we just thought, yeah, let's work on our own little house. So after looking around a bit, Josh sits me down, takes out a piece of paper and says, just be open to this concept. And he starts showing me numbers and how if I could open myself up to maybe a duplex, how we could live for free. And so, I mean, all the numbers made sense. And I have to say, Josh is very good at explaining things and understanding that if people are coming from different angles, how to be gentle with it. So he was very smart in how he approached it. And it opened me up after a couple of days of just sleeping on it and thinking about it. Just like, you know what? You're right. This isn't our forever home. We're just newly married. We're getting our master's degree. It's probably just a better idea to make the smart, financial decision here.
Right.
And we ended up holding that house even after we got our master's and we moved on. We ended up still renting that house to college students for quite a long time until we actually moved to Austria as a married couple. So the campus that we went to when we were sophomores had a position opening on that campus. And we decided, we had one daughter at the time, and she was 2, our oldest. And so we moved over there as a family for 4 years. And that was the best decision ever.
Sound of Music, eat your heart out. I mean, we really did live like Maria von Trapp one time came over for a song, and I said, there's no way to solve a problem like Maria. That's
now
what
you
I
guys could
say.
Probably have like a sing-off with each of your families.
Oh my gosh, the Von Trapp family singers. Except for we don't
now.
sing.
Well, I have a running gag that I keep trying to stick. I keep trying to invite guests on for a karaoke night in the future. So,
oh no!
So our please will do it.
How do you solve a problem like Maria? There you go.
We actually had. Okay, so this is funny. We had 2. We had 2 children in Austria, and
we lived there for 4 straight years. Barely came home to America, so we felt a little European when we were done.
Anyhow, our one daughter is named Maria, so that's
true. That's true. Yeah, she is.
That was born there.
Ironically, not after the movie. We probably should have done it after the movie. But so while we were there, we had a very interesting role where we were they called it student life, but it was within this beautiful hotel experience. And it was a restored 700-year-old monastery turned into a luxury resort, mostly a luxury hotel, conference center, all kinds of things. And my role for 4 years was to be the liaison with the hotel and make sure that we really operated this property like a hotel. And so I always say that's where we really kind of got a bug for this, the resort part. We kind of took the job to be able to experience other cultures. We really love diversity, and we love putting ourselves in other people's shoes and trying to walk in their
history.
Yeah, history. I mean, to understand why we, the good of other people. So we were excited on every level to live there, and we did. And we speak ein bisschen Deutsch. Es tut mir leid.
Say, you had to run
your
first hotel speaking German.
Ein bisschen Deutsch. Sehr schlecht. We're very awful at speaking German. But they are so forgiving of us silly Americans because they speak English better than we do. And it was a detriment because they let us not speak German too much. But that's not pleasant.
I thought you did pretty good.
We did all right.
I could go to the grocery store and you could talk to the guys.
I mean, we did renovations in German. So that was good.
That's what I mean.
That's right. So not so much of that maybe helps you, Jess. We don't want to sidetrack you with your grilling journalistic interview.
No, absolutely. I mean, I am so into the romance and everything of it too that I almost forgot that we were going to talk about.
Oh, it was so good, Jess.
Investment.
By the way, we should show you the pictures.
Really
I mean,
lovely.
we lived a dreamy life. Got to travel to all the major capitals of Europe and even give tours to as part of my opportunity. I got to. We had such a great time.
We took students every semester to Rome, so we did
Rome, all around Germany and Austria.
Yeah.
Wow. I'm extremely jealous because I know a friend of mine, one of my best friends from college, actually studied abroad in Austria herself for vocal performance. So it was like, that was one program that I was like very, very jealous of. I don't think it was a lot of opera and operetta, all that stuff. So it was not my forte, but I was so jealous at the time. I was like, oh, I want to go to Austria. It sounds amazing.
Mozart, right? Mozart's from there. So you know what you would have loved, Jess? So a normal thing to do in Austria, this is so interesting. You, for $10, sometimes you just walk right into some gorgeous 70-person or 50-person event, sitting on fancy old chairs from the good old days of the empire in a room that looks like something out of a movie. I mean, you think James Bond's going to come through. He has one of these little microfiche and we trip him. Wow. He falls into the musicians, and then of course we take it from him. But no, I'm just, so it's incredible. And you just walk into that stuff right off the street when you're in those cute little quaint areas.
I think
That's
it's great
awesome.
that we're talking about this. I do think it
I have
leads
talked about
into
this a lot.
I know we haven't really
Yeah.
mentioned this, but I'm glad you're letting us take this
Thank you,
dive
Jess.
because it reignites a lot of things as to why we love what we do now.
Oh, yeah. I mean, we were born to do this, what we do, and we were sensitive hearts a bit. So we kind of are aware of what's really going on. We tend to think we are. And when we were in Europe, we knew it was a gift that was going to fleet away, and we just sucked it up.
Well, yeah, I'm personally so glad that we're given this opportunity on the podcast to get to tell those stories because I'm so fascinated with hearing about, because I'm still in this phase of my life where I'm kind of like starting my story of how I'm getting to where I'm going to go. And I don't know where that's going to end up being necessarily, but I'm so interested in hearing like how everybody started out. So it's really cool to hear that this is how you got led to start being involved in resort investing, and that hotel in Austria is like what kicked off your career, which is really, really cool. So to keep going, Josh, did you grow up in Ohio too, or did you just end up at was it Franciscan? Do I have that right?
You said that perfectly. Yeah, I'm from Philadelphia market area, so I've always kind of lived here, except for those times where we got to live other places. But this is our home base outside of Philadelphia.
Cool, cool. So in your bio, you mention washing dishes at the age of 14, how it gave you that ethic that was required for hospitality management. Can you tell us more about some of those lessons and any of the lessons that you learned early on?
Wow. Yeah, great question. We put that in as a little bit of a joke on our website. It is 100% true, but it was a tongue in cheek. I said, that we learned the ethic of hospitality by working in the dish room at 14. So this is a little bit of a deep dive, but my little brother and I were a 2-person family, and my mom made it through the 80s, late 70s, 80s, and 90s with very little money. So we grew up, I would say, right on the poverty line. And it was because my poor mom had a stroke when she was 28. The poor
Wow.
girl was the nurse. She probably would have been able to do well even as a single mother. But that stroke knocked her out of the work market. And she actually stayed in a coma for 5 days and probably shouldn't have made it by medical reasons. Cerebral hemorrhage at 28. So she ends up raising us the rest of those years with hook and crook, like barely getting through each month. So every day I could make money, I made money. So probably from age of 10 on, 12, we're doing the paperboy stuff, which is a relic of the past. I mean, the paperboy gimmick, it was such a scheme. Like us paper boys, we were out there legit working in the morning. And here's the funniest part that a
Yeah.
modern kid would never grasp. We had no pay rate. It was, we did the job and there was no hours and no payables unless you collect the money from Aunt Sally and Mrs. Smith and Jones. And they literally would not answer the door sometimes. So
Wow.
you're like, oh, don't get paid this week. So the old days, that's actually a really interesting grind that poor kids don't have anymore. But so from then, first real job I got was dishes, man. I loved it. So I was always in kitchens from then till 20, probably doing something or becoming a waiter, a valet guy, all kinds of various things. Biggest claim to fame in the world of restaurant laborer was making pizzas at a high volume, famous pizzeria in my region. And I was the top pizza man at 16. That was like a big
Oh.
stinking deal. Throwing pizzas, still pretty good at it.
I was just gonna say, our kids still think
We're
he's the top pizza
we're
man.
still pizza guys.
Friday nights.
So anyway, someday we got to open up a
pizzeria.
pizzeria, honey. We don't even have any pizzerias in our businesses.
That's next. That's next on the list. Right after winery, golf course, pizzeria. It's definitely possible.
And just to summarize, the deal is we'll share with you as you ask us more questions. We'll share how we now are really in the world of working with hundreds of good investors. And honestly, I would say probably 30 to 40 of them are CamaPlan investors. Either we helped them find CamaPlan or they found CamaPlan and found us. And
Right,
what
yeah.
we're doing today is more on the side of developing the funds to help people join us side by side on these kinds of resort investments. It was kind of the other way around at first. So then once we got into resort development, which we can go into, we realized it was all about the way you treat guests. Even though you and I love beautiful buildings and we can go into all of our story, it was never really about the buildings. Yes, they have to be clean and beautiful, but if you don't show like a sensitive kind of hospitality, then people won't be touched. And actually, they may underwhelm them.
Yeah, no, I agree with that completely. I started out also in high school, college, over the summers working in the restaurant industry as well. One of my first days in a restaurant was like almost like a hazing thing. They had us do dishes. And you literally had to sit there all night, steel wool, like my fingernails were rubbed raw, just like doing dishes. And the people that stuck with it, they were always like pretty impressed by in that they were like, okay, you know what? Now you're allowed to
You're
prepare the
legit.
food and make the, like now you're allowed to get trained. So I definitely can relate to a lot of those stories, especially the dishwashing, like you said it. And I was like, immediately I had a visceral reaction to like my fingernails started tingling. But but I agree. I mean, I think that it's definitely something that I've carried on. Like I worked up at the front desk at CamaPlan when I started out. I still answer phones sometimes here, or I'll help people with basic customer service requests here at CamaPlan. And it's so important. The elite customer service thing is something we really drive home at CamaPlan as well. And I really agree with that. The way that you treat your customers is, I think, of the utmost importance. And then you get that
Absolutely.
respect back. You treat people the way you want to be treated. It's something
Amen.
my mom always taught me. She was always the same too about like buy a house, don't rent it. So it was nice to hear that you guys, she's always like, be nice, treat people the way you want to be treated, but also buy, don't rent.
Did you buy yet? Or are you
like
still waiting?
No, we're roommates still. So
Oh, nice.
it's a lot of fun, but I am trying to, get that nest egg up so that I can buy, not rent, to live up to one of her pillars. But yeah, no, I definitely agree with that. So to expand a little bit more on that, what are some of the successes and challenges that you found working in the hospitality industry? I'm especially interested in like some of the challenges that you've run into and how you've overcome those obstacles.
So the quick chronology of how we get from there to here is, just to keep it kind of streamlined, we went into, we got a really great opportunity to help people build this famous regional developer build luxury homes on the water. We got to do that for years and years. And then the recession started. This is after we came home from Europe. The recession starts. And honestly, that whole business of very high end $5 million houses, it pauses for many years. And so during that downturn, we had to leave that world of building, which was a dream for me. Actually, I love all things related to investment, but building and craftsmanship and the care of architecture and the way it can kind of soothe your soul is so important to us that it was like a dream come true. So when the recession hit, it was a heartbreaker, but we knew our skills were related to team leadership and building business. So this is a sad part of our story. This is one of the setbacks. We leave construction because it was over. It was now 2010, and we buy our first business, Melanie and I.
Is that where I jump
Yeah,
in?
that's where you jump in. That's where you jump in because it's not a good part.
I was very touched by Josh when he basically said to an old business partner, I don't think that we're able to make any money in this economy anymore. These luxury houses, this thing is of the past. So let me go, and I'm going to, I have some ideas how I'm going to raise money for, my family. And Josh has always been entrepreneurial, like in its core of his being. So he came home and told me he wanted to open a hoods business. Well, not open, I should say, buy a franchise of a hoods business, which literally goes after restaurants close at night. They clean restaurant hoods, and it takes basically all night, and maybe you can get 2 restaurants done in one night kind of thing. And you just get the dirtiest you've ever gotten, just restaurant grease and everything.
Wow.
So he's this is one idea. And he had all his reasons. Again, piece of paper comes out.
You should give him a simple reason why. Well, just because it sounds bizarre.
Well, the reason, one of the reasons why is he actually had a bigger idea. He really wanted to get into social media marketing
or franchising. We wanted to be a franchisor because we believed in the Michael Gerber E-Myth, which says, build a business as a franchise prototype. And we said, we had read that book so many times. I said, honestly, what if we could get a franchise that was recession resistant and it was based on trainable skills, not high-end specialty skills? And so we bought this one that fit those criteria. And we said, good, you buy one, you leverage the one to buy 2, you buy 3, you buy 4, and then someday you just go start your own franchise. Not in the same industry, by the way. I just wanted to I wanted to buy a business to let them teach me how to run a franchise.
Right.
And I was pretty honest with them, actually.
But also you chose this one specifically because it had the evening hours, and during the day you were start doing business armory. So therefore it would it made sense to him to sort of be able to have the daytime to do his think tank work, and then to be able to have the nighttime to learn the franchise business and make that work. So he came to me and said, I need to liquidate our retirement accounts to do this. And I, at that time, was very much of the mindset that you just don't touch that. You don't go there, and you stay on track with, your certain investments and all that kind of stuff. So I very, very reluctantly signed the dotted line that we would, liquidate and buy this. So anyhow, it was a rough go. I mean, if you're working during the day and then, clean and grease out at night, it was a rough go.
As a matter of fact, yeah, we got invited into a book, and this book, not that you guys can see it, but I'm showing up for Jess. It has us as one of the don't quit stories from a book we were part of with Kyle Wilson, and it's don't quit. And they went through and they basically let Melanie and I tell our story, because there was a part in that story as it was crashing and burning, and it was because we didn't know how to sell. We kind of knew the language of selling, but losing this business was a training in selling, and that changed the rest of our course of our life. It ended up being that we were selling by the time we lost the business, but at first we took it for granted. We said, oh, this is a commodity service. It's a franchise. We'll get customers. Didn't work that way. By the end, we were a cold, hard, process-driven sales crew, and we were selling bigger and faster than anybody in the country. It's just that we were so far behind on payments that there was a day where they said, you have built a couple $100,000 book of business. Either pay us XYZ or hand us the keys. And we handed them the keys. And it was the right decision, because they had basically destroyed it. It was destructive where it was going for us, but we did learn to sell. And it was from that. Boy, that was a deep dive into Hoods. Hoods was a setback that we learned a lot from.
Hoods was a setback, but it was one of those things, like, you were just bringing up, Jess, like you're forging your pathway. And it's one of those where you look back and you're like, thank God for that, because it taught us a myriad of things. And, just on the personal relationship, just that no matter how hard it was for us to get through that, to make the bills, like we weren't going to quit. And we really teach that to each other over and over again. Like, I'm never quitting on you. You're never quitting on me. We're making this work no matter what we have to do. And I was expecting our sixth baby during that time. So, but you get through it. And I think sometimes when you're at the bottom and you work your way up, there are so many great lessons to be learned, and to do it together just creates a stronger bond, stronger team every single step of the way. Like, I look back on that and I say, if you really look at where we're at right now and you connect all the dots do connect. They're not like all over random. Like, they really all sort of lead. You can see how each of the jobs, each of the things we did are different skill sets that lead to where you are today. And, we're still plowing forward.
Yeah. And then resorts showed up because we had this chance to work with this developer who owned a defunct, like an operating but very tired old beachfront hotel that he would plan to tear down, or had planned to tear down before the recession. It's now 2012, and we brainstorm a new business plan. And from there, we get to lead the construction, very, very elaborate construction project, like $8 million. And then to get where we are today, I'm going to say we hired operators. I served a lot of the construction leadership, and then we hired operators that were from Marriott. And so we had a premise in 2012, right, Mel? We said that group of people that I was a part of, Melanie was my cheerleader on the side, saying, yeah, we thought you build a beautiful resort, you sell it to New Yorkers and Philadelphians for vacation, and they pay you good money, you get to do it again. That was the franchise prototype again. And what we learned is the management company was structured inappropriately, because Marriott is different than a super seasonal resort. Okay. Bottom line, Marriott runs around 80% full every day. And seasonal resorts run at 100% full for 2 months. So how do you design a whole different management strategy? Totally different types of staff, different types of training, different types of everything. I was unaware of that, because as an outsider like you, Jess, I go to a hotel and I expect whatever the rate we're paying, that's the level of service we're going to get. If it's $100, I expect it to just be clean and we'll be very happy. If it's $600 or $500, it really better be super special, and everything better just be awesome. And you and I sometimes don't think about the fact that we're at the hotel today, but 2 months from now, it's going to basically be 5 people instead of 100 guests. So we don't have to worry about that because we're the consumers, but the operators do. So with this Marriott group really crashed and burned so bad that's a whole nother story, but to the point where F words were very common at our front desk. And I remember being the project lead trying to finish construction, and we're open now. And it was so striking. This is ended up being like a $37 million resort. And it was common for guests to be so mad at us that they would yell at us right at the front desk. And it just shocked me.
Wow.
So from that, we changed
That-
course.
Right.
Changed course. So that was a different management group, and I was just a construction guy. So from that point, we flipped it and we said, let's go heavy into management, and construction is a secondary skill set, because really the money's made in operating and renting this room out. So we went all in on management. Now, I do want Melanie to explain Viva Mei, though, because years later, we get a chance to set up our own company and do this same model that we did 3 times for someone else. Now we do it for hundreds of good families through CamaPlan and other things. And Melanie can share that.
So now we're a team, and but I think what Josh was getting at, and just to reiterate a little bit, is that learning that the like he said, the building can be absolutely beautiful, which is, we both have always loved construction, fixing things up, seeing how they can be used. It just gets us excited when we picture people. Josh loves, we were just this weekend figuring out how our patios were going to work on our current property, and he's just like, he has to sit down on the furniture like, oh, I just love, if I were coming here, I love this little nook right here.
Nooks
like,
are great.
we just get into nooks
Ambiance.
and how people can really love and utilize the space. So
I'm a Nook fan myself.
Nooks are the
We are.
best, right? So
Lounge furniture
lounges
outside,
and where
love
the fire pits are
Yeah.
going and all that. Like, we just love to imagine how people can love and utilize the space, and just being beautiful and uplifting. But we've realized, and maybe even more so, it's the service and the love that you feel in beautiful places, that it has to be
Right.
both sides of the coin, if not even more on the service side, is where our heart, that's probably our biggest why. So we love to make things beautiful, but we love people to experience beauty of person while they're there. And so we, in creating our management company and operating our resorts, we created a name out of 2 French words, inspired because our first big property was a French winemaker from France came over and bought this land in New Jersey, called it after himself, Louis Renault. And so we were kind of decided, let's look into that. It kind of was inspiring. So we put 2 French words together, Viva and Mei, Viva Mei, meaning revive the soul. And so it was perfect for us, because we said, yes, we're reviving the soul of our properties. We're always going to be buying properties that need the TLC and a new vision. And, we have to see something there that's worth reviving. But all of our properties are going to have training and service that is reviving the soul of every guest that walks onto our property. That's, for me, the biggest passion, and what I love to just discuss and share with all of our investors. We all get really kind of, I think, excited about that on our properties. We have investors meet quarterly, and we are able to not only meet together, but sprinkle all that love on them.
I want to, before we get into that, because that's how Jess started with investor hospitality, which is the punchline. But Melanie's right. Viva Mei was the reason we were willing to risk it all again and put any money we had. Of course, all of our money goes into these projects, and we take investors side by side. So Viva Mei was why we're doing this. So if you were to ask us at the end of the day, what are you guys doing? We are here to revive the soul of these properties, which will create good, very strong financial returns. But it's because we're called to treat people with infinite dignity and worth. Like, that's what we feel our job is. We feel like it fits what we're doing in life. And this culture, we said, how do you teach hundreds and hundreds of team members? Remember back, my teeth were cut in seasonal hospitality, seasonal resort, expensive hospitality. So what we would do is we would hire almost 400 people every year new, and we would have to train them and have them on the floor or in the rooms within 3 or 4 weeks in a room that's going to be $500, $600, $700. How do you do that? So what we did is we said, you can really never get every skill perfected in 3 weeks. But what we can do is we can be clear about why we're doing it. So the why, the WHY for us is clear, and we communicate that through interview, we communicate that through training weekly, and we communicate it through never giving up. And the 3 words that summarize our why, we had a great time on the Bigger Pockets business podcast last week, telling the 3 secrets. And anybody who's out there running resorts right now, feel free to use these 3 secrets. But there's 3 core words that summarize everything we do. And we say, it's okay if you want to work here and you're the best marketing director, or if you're the best front desk manager. These are the 3 core words that we're about to tell you, and you're going to love it here if you enjoy these words. If you dislike one of these 3 words, you might be the world's best front desk manager. You're going to dislike it here, and you'd probably rather, but it'd be better if you just didn't want to take this job. So the 3 words are simple: joy, humility, and ministry. And joy, humility, and ministry have become like a core. We can teach on that in any business, but in hospitality, it fits like a glove. And, to summarize each of them real fast so that you can ask us questions, joy just means, does this work bring you, because you're an individual, you're an infinitely dignified individual, but does it make you happy to work in hospitality? Because not everybody likes hospitality. So you got to like it. Okay. That's just like an indicator.
Yeah.
2,
Uh-huh.
will you join us and seek humility as a gift or as a strength? Actually, we call humility a strength because that's an oxymoron.
I like that. I really like that.
Yeah. Well, because if you can seek humility, first of all, you tend to find gratitude easier. You obviously want to chip in and help each other, and you never put yourself above another. The greatest thing is in our culture is we really are constantly trying to see the good of the other. So humility, you need a little bit of that. And none of us are perfect. Like, we're terribly not perfect,
Well, I was just going
but
to
we
say,
want it.
exactly. And in the process, we're all seeking humility, meaning like all of us are encouraging each other towards this greater goal. You don't have to come on the team perfect as in any one of these categories, but if they resonate in you,
Resonate's a great word.
if they resonate in you, something like that seems attractive, that I want to go deeper into like what they mean by this and kind of execute on that, then you're a perfect candidate. That's exactly what, what our team aspires to.
And then the third one is a shocker, but it became clear to me about 3 or 4 years into running hospitality that we needed a word that has never been used in hospitality before, except for originally. Originally, hospitality was always considered a ministry, but in modern day, we don't talk about it as a ministry. To define it, it is doing simple things for a spiritual good. And so this is when you and I on Thanksgiving go and feed the poor. This is when we try to give toys for tots. We're doing simple things. Like, remember, have you tried that before? Maybe you have. You've gone on Thanksgiving, you go to a soup kitchen and you show up to do your volunteering because you're like, I want to do something good for society. I want to do something right now.
Right.
And you know what they do? They make you fill bags of cans. That's like, ask anybody. Like, if you're lucky, you get to give out food. Like, that would be the high end of what you could do that day. But the normal people like us, I had to just load brown bags, put them in someone else's pickup truck, and then drive them to families' houses who couldn't get to there. And so what we did was super simple. Like, what about putting a can in a bag and driving it is fancy? Nothing. But the meaning was super deep.
Right. It's so significant. Yeah.
Just exactly like feeding the homeless. Of course, you're nourishing their body and they need that food. But by the very act, you're saying you're worth love and you're worth this action. And that's
Amen.
the
Right.
spiritual.
See, once you come to a hospitality venue and you feel that, it like changes your reaction, you as a guest. And it really is, we were struggling operating the first few years. This is 8 years ago at my first company. That company grew to 500 people, was nationally ranked as one of the best hospitality companies in the country. We were in all kinds of magazines, Wall Street Journal, everything. So it worked, but we didn't know we were going to be successful. We were just struggling, right? And there was this time where I looked up the word on the internet because I just couldn't understand why we were missing the mark on hospitality at first. And hospitality comes from an ancient word called hospes. And hospes is the same word in English for thousands of years until modern English. It means 3 English words. I hope you're sitting down while you're driving, because, or you could be standing and driving, but that's hard when you're listening to the podcast. But I hope you're sitting down, because wait till you hear what hospes means. It means hospitality, hospitals, and hospice. So for thousands of years, that was one word. And if anybody has ever had someone die in hospice, the whole experience is spiritual. It's all about, it's okay, Uncle Jim. It's okay. You can let go. We love you. It's all about, it's not actually medicine anymore, right? Because the medicine's over at that point. So anyway, that's how powerful hospitality can be if done with a humble heart.
Yeah. Well, I love hearing about this philosophy that you two have. I think that it's so interesting. And as someone who's probably just stayed at like regular old Holiday Inns for just because it's all I could afford if I was going on a trip or anything like that. I mean, I think that that's something to aspire to in just business in general. If you can have that, you can put your passion into it. I think that makes such a difference in what the product that you're selling at the end of the day.
You said it. If you can put your passion, you said that quote real quick, Jess, and that's actually what we're
Mhm.
doing is we're unlocking the power of all the
Yeah.
good people that work with us. They're allowed to be as good as they want to be to our guests. You know what I mean? Like no
Yeah. Mhm.
regulations, as generous as you want to be to grandma and to Mrs. Smith, hold the door for them, help them get to their table, find out if their kids need a toy,
Yeah.
all those cool things that just change people's entire experience and they feel loved.
That's awesome. I definitely wanna come and visit and just get that sense because I feel like I don't know how you guys have been like, how things have been affected by COVID-19 and what's been going on. I don't know if you wanna talk some more about that and how that it sounds like the philosophy behind your business helped during this time.
Viva Mei, to finish the Viva Mei business plan,
Mhm.
we had to shut down because we are following the governor's orders. So COVID forced
Right.
our operations to close until just now, actually. When you're listening to this podcast, we are now back open, but we hadn't been. So the business plan at our company, because we're a big turnaround company, we're more like a business turnaround company that owns hotels and does it in hospitality form. We always
Uh-huh.
sell weddings as part of our core competency. With the number of weddings we sold was well over 340 weddings in just over a year, which makes
Wow.
us
Oh,
probably one of the
cool.
largest wedding sales forces in America. Seriously. And therefore, COVID proved our business model because we'd said to our investors early on, hospitality might be confusing. You might be used to self-storage. You might be used to multifamily.
Mhm.
And you're like, well, I know multifamily because somebody needs a place to stay. Hotels confuse me. I always say, great news. Our business plan buys very cheap. We use the Warren Buffett model. We buy ugly buildings that need restoration. So we buy right. We spend the money up
Yeah.
front to reposition it. And while we're spending money fixing it, we are out there selling like an amazing sales force. And so while we were under construction, we had already sold 310 of those weddings. We weren't even open yet.
Before we even acquired the property, we actually had already, architects that we had worked with before that we already liked. We kind of got them to sort of look at the property. And we already, from the day one, once the property purchase was made, we already had computer renderings of what ballrooms were going to look like. So we were able to start sales day one. And at the time, we were saying, this is what this room's going to look like. And it looked like ridiculous, right?
Compared to what it was.
Night and day
Absolutely, it's a
from
shocker.
what it was. So then we went through the process of the rooms were being gutted and that poster's still sitting there. This is what the room's going to look like, trust us. But
Right.
honestly, we had such a great sales team. And at one point, then, the rooms are just dirt and now we're building up. And we learned that right away is that, in hospitality, in order for your property to increase in its value, you have to have different streams of revenue coming in. And that's also what our model is, this property, our first one that we were talking about, already had a golf course and it had a restaurant, it had a hotel, and it has a winery. And so we said, well, where can we bring even more into this? Let's really capitalize on these weddings. And one of the main reasons we bought the property is because in its last year, with zero marketing, it had 700 inbound leads for weddings, and they weren't able to book anywhere near close to that. They didn't really have a sales team, nothing was going on. So we said, how are they with no marketing? And we realized the market really wants vineyard weddings and that there's a real
Right.
opportunity here to capitalize on that. That was a missed stream of revenue. So we built it starting with that premise and saying, can we increase the value of this property? And we worked all the numbers out and we said, we know that we can increase golf. We've got some great ideas there. We know that we can expand on the restaurant. We know that the taste room's there's all these little extra cherries. But if we just really hammer home these weddings, we're going to make it, even just with the weddings and none of those other
That's
cherries.
true.
We can make it just weddings. So, and like Josh said, during COVID, that really became clear to us, like sort of how it withstood it. It withstood it.
did.
And to the point where,
Yeah.
first of all, we have 120,000 square feet to work with. So we have 5 different wedding venues all on one property. We made it sort of very fancy, the more rustic vineyard. They all have a different feel. So it's really exciting because when a couple comes, we've got something for everybody, so that's exciting. But also, because we have that amount of space, we have that amount of availability. And we've been hearing story after story about how other venues during this time said, I'm sorry, your wedding was supposed to be here in March. We don't have anything available or open to you till December, if not next year. And we said, wow, that's just not happening for us at all. We're basically saying, I'm sorry, your wedding couldn't happen in April, but how about July or August? Whenever the governor says we can go, let's pick a date and go, because we have that availability. And so we actually gained people that couldn't have their weddings in other venues because of that. We gained more sales, more weddings that way. And honestly, quite frankly, people were home and we kept selling. We kept selling through COVID. And our investors, our accountable equity team of investors, we were able to keep updating them. And that was kind of what we felt, accountable equity. It's in our name. We want to be held accountable. And we want to have just that clear transparency and that relationship with our investors. So Josh was always doing videos and saying, here's our updates. We sold a few more weddings. This is how we're handling COVID. And just that constant communication throughout, just so that everybody could feel comfortable in where this is going.
Yeah, Melanie says it perfectly. We sold more weddings during the COVID crisis than we did a year ago when we were killing it, and we were very successful. So it means that weddings, even though we're a 4-star luxury property, we charge middle-class prices for our events. So it allows the market to be enormous. We can capture so many good families, not just the 1% elite. We can satisfy so many levels of socioeconomic affordability. So because of that, when the investors found out about us a year ago, they used to call us, oh, you're the resort people that do the same thing as multifamily people. They didn't know how to account for us, but we've proven that we're as consistent as multifamily. So it's very exciting.
Oh, good for you guys. Well, thank you for sharing that. I'm like, all of a sudden now I want to pull up my Pinterest board and
amen.
talk
That's
some
my
more
favorite thing.
I know, right? Now I'm like, okay, well, now we have to start hitting the boards, finding myself a nice fiance to get married to.
That's great.
So I have a bunch of follow-up questions from these. I do want to talk some more about accountable equity, what you guys do in addition to resort investing. So you guys want to touch some more on that?
I think Melanie said it great. I want to let her say it. So she's launched with us a podcast. It's called Heart to Heart Investing. It comes out next month, where all of our various investors, including a lot of CamaPlanners, get on our show and we talk about how you learn to invest around a dinner table, basically. By the way, the best investors are not the Harvard people. It's not just people who went to Ivy League. It's people like us. We did it. We learned how to build businesses, and then we met somebody. We told them how you do it, and then they made money. And that's what we do on this podcast. So it's very exciting. But it is very much a community. It's so different than all the other groups that I'm a part of. It's not just a place where you can invest your funds. We actually have a lot of education, and we get together 4 times a year. Could you tell them what we do, Mel? Tell them what that thing's called. And this is what our investors love about Accountable Equity.
So we get together, like you said, and now we call them Learn and Grows. Initially, it was about come and see the project that we're doing, and we were talking about the current project. But then we realized in the beginning, Josh was way ahead of me on this, and I had to slowly catch up. And I've been to conferences, and we've been to all sorts of things to learn what syndication is, how to raise money in a group with everyday people. Nobody's out there. We don't have just 2 big millionaires in here. There's almost 100 of us that are together. So how do we raise money from just your everyday person who who wants to diversify their money? They don't want it just in the stock market, especially seeing what COVID does. And it's always a fluctuating thing. And they've always been interested in real estate, but maybe don't know how to get into that. So it was great because I was learning it kind of just a step ahead of our investors. And this is something that, Josh was really patient and really good about walking me through it and us learning this whole process together. And it was probably about 6 months into that I started to say to him, you know what, if we had all the money in the world and we could have done this whole rehab, this whole project ourselves, I would choose to do it with investors because it is bringing such a good for them. People really want to get in this industry, and look at how many people we have met and become excellent friends with. We're just friends with our investors and their stories and it is so interesting. Everybody's different journeys and how they get to this. And one of our investors was joking and said, it was on our bucket list to always own a winery. Now it's like my wife and I can say we did it. We're part of a winery. And just just stories like that, you just say, this is really incredible, this is meant to be, this is just really beautiful, and let's turn it over from just like, hey, let's come look at this project and this deal and this kind of thing, to just let's be together, let's learn together, let's grow together, learn and grow. And, we say accountable equity. We, again, want to be accountable with our investors' equity, but we also are all on this journey together called life, and we all want to be accountable with our own equity. So let's learn how to do that together. And so now we come together. Our chef puts on a beautiful meal. We usually tour the building and just sort of see, during construction. And then we have a speaker, and then we have just time to just really gather around round table. And so then that kind of grew into now what Josh is saying. Our podcast has said, this is us and our investors and those who are close enough to drive and can get here, because we have investors from all over the country. Some of them fly in for this. It's really awesome.
We have investors from Napa, California, ironically.
Yeah, he's been out
Oh,
a few
cool.
times.
Yeah.
So it kind of grew into this podcast. Let's really just put it out there that even if you don't really know what this thing is and you're interested, you've always kind of just, maybe I want to just know, we're kind of the 101. Let's just get it down to bare basics. Let's just talk about what it is and how it can work, and just answer the simplest questions, but just get to know each other through the process.
Melanie, I want to join.
You want to? Josh always, he'll look at me.
Honestly, I'm
Let's
leaning in too.
I love this lady. She's great. She's the mother of 10, and she just had a baby. But at the same time, when we were starting the first program with Viva Mei, and we hadn't yet created accountable equity, because the daisy chain was first Viva Mei, because we knew how to do what we knew how to do. And we learned how to let other people join us through syndication, because I didn't know that was available. And now CamaPlan is a phenomenal educator. It teaches people how to get involved in alternative investing all over the country.
Yeah, I think education is such a huge pillar to it. And I love that accountable equity does that too. It's I think the more you can learn, the more you can grow.
Amen.
Not to use your words, but but it's true. The more that you can learn about something, nobody's going to come into something being a pro at it. So I think that it's awesome that you're offering that right up front.
We agree.
So that kind of answers one of my questions that I was going to ask you guys, is what kind of investor, if you could describe the investor that is attracted to your investments. I know you've touched on, this is kind of the common person.
It is the common person. It is the sit down at the table. But, there's this one element that we all should talk about a little bit, and that is the accredited investor status. And so many people in CamaPlan have, maybe 50-50, have heard about this or not heard. You can join CamaPlan no matter what your personal net worth is or what your income is. But to join an asset group like ours, the government do a filing, and our filing is because it's so large and because we have to talk about it on the radio, we have to make it accredited only. So that's a little regrettable. If you're listening to this and you're not accredited, the good news is if you hit our website, accountableequity.com, you can still join us for a learn and grow. That is just a simple little cost. You join us and you get all the value and the learning, and you get to be exposed to everything, even if you're not yet in the accredited definition. But those who are accredited can join us, which does mean you have significant income or already have accumulated $1 million of assets, which, by the way, is a lot of good people, because they're not their house, but their second house could be counted, their income houses, their stock portfolio, their 401k. You add it all up, and if it hits $1 million, then you qualify. It doesn't mean you sit in Bentley cars and luxury cars. It doesn't mean you're that kind of millionaire.
Right.
Sure.
It just means you've saved over the years.
Right. Awesome. Well, that's good to know. That's definitely, I think it's going to be helpful for our listeners to hear that. So another question I did have for you guys is, so right now you're actively purchasing more resorts to rehab, reopen. Do you want to talk some more about that? Talk about some of your latest resort projects that you've got going on?
I think right now we just realized, let's just get this ball rolling quicker than we expected, especially because of COVID. There's a lot of opportunities where, there's hotels that just can't recover from this, and let's be ready for those purchases.
Yeah. I mean, you guys have all seen it wherever you live now, whether, of course, the news is really bad for hospitality, but ironically, a company like us is doing better than even last year because of selling. So it shows that right now hospitality is stressed, but that's almost the perfect signal to buy, because the types we buy are not Hiltons and Marriotts, though I love those too. It's the places like what we've bought over the years, which are independent properties that have multiple revenue streams, and they're anywhere on the whole East Coast right now. Someday we'll probably go all the way to the West Coast, but we're looking at something, in Maryland. We'll start looking at things in Florida. But the way we're buying them is it a non-corporate owner? Probably family. So they are tired, and COVID kind of was the last kick in the gut. And they're ready to earn a little bit out of their purchase, but they're ready to get rid of it. And so we're heading into a really ideal buying market.
Nice. So the next question I did have goes back to some of your investors. In either of your opinions, what do you think makes a successful investor? And what do you think are some of the biggest pitfalls that they should avoid? Like, what should they understand about business fundamentals or experience in the hospitality industry? If you can touch some more on that, that they should understand when assessing their own risk tolerance.
Yeah. So the key thing to think about, everyone, and we talk about this when we do an onboarding, one of us staffers talk to you and we make sure that it's a good fit for you, because we're never going to ask you to join us if it doesn't fit your family. So number one is, do you have a time horizon between 5 and 10 years? If you need the money next year, then it's not the right thing to get into any real estate, probably. You should probably stay really liquid. So this is a wealth
Mhm.
appreciation opportunity. We also have other ways you can invest with us where you can get almost double-digit cash flow all the time. So there's different ways you can invest with us, and we do always have a fund available for you to join. But bottom line is, we go through that with them in the preliminary. And I think you should just remember that we're offering you a good bit of diversification. Like Melanie and I, we invest in a few other things. We use life insurance. We use all kinds of things. We are highly invested here. This is by far our biggest investment of cash, but we like when people keep their balance as well. So we're very honest and transparent about, you got to have a time horizon. You have to have some risk tolerance, of course, and we do all the disclosures that are required.
And I think it's really good. One of our investors has been doing this for a long, long time, said, it's really comes down to getting to know who you're investing with. And that is another reason for the Learn and Grows, is feeling comfortable, getting to know us, getting to know who we are. And if things align, I think it makes you comfortable and it makes you feel like you're part of it.
Surprisingly, business and investing is more personal than people originally would have said. And when you can trust the people, or if you want to get to know the people, the business can come and change. But if the people are working, they have your best interest at mind as best as they can, obviously, then maybe that is a reduction of risk. But those are some of the factors we like to talk about.
Cool. Well, thank you for sharing that. So, another question that I do have for you guys has to do with the spiritual aspect of what you guys believe in and the passion that you both have for the hospitality industry. What or who were, besides each other, some of the biggest influences on you when you both started out? Or do you still have any recommendations, books that you read, things like that, that you could recommend to listeners?
For me, it's children. It's being a mom. Like, I just think
Yeah.
that what I do at home is what we do on a huge scale in the hotel, right? We make sure there's toilet paper in
Right.
there. We make sure that these, and the goal every day is,
Especially now.
and it would exactly right. Toilet paper is a good thing to have right now. No, but I think just on a very basic level, my heart is I've always wanted to have a lot of children. I'm from a big family
Uh-huh.
myself. I've always loved children. And what are children? They're just there to be loved and to be served. And so I've done that. I was the oldest in a big family, so I did it all growing up and I'm doing it now. But it's to do it with love is always the challenge every day. And I think sometimes even with your own children, your own family, it's sometimes even hardest. Like, don't you know, I need to get
That's right.
something done. And it's kind of like, no, I wake up every
Yeah.
day and say, I have to choose to smile and I have to choose to love and I have to choose to serve and love. And so I feel like that's always been my deepest calling. And now it's just a gift that we can do this as a business.
Yeah, and the one I'll say on a lot of podcasts, so it's a little redundant if you've heard me before, is the Dale Carnegie. So I've met a lot of very, very powerful people in my life, and a lot of times I ask them about books. Early on in life, people said, "Oh, have you read How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie?" Sometimes people would skip the name and they'd go right to Dale Carnegie. So this book was written 100
Mhm.
years ago, and it was a dissertation. It was like an academic tome on seeking the good of others. You cannot communicate
Mhm.
or have dialogue unless you're putting yourself in their shoes. Then you can earn their trust to have a conversation. Otherwise, you're just voices yelling at each other. We are
Right.
so profoundly influenced by that book that it allows me to deal with all kinds of different diversity of opinion and options, and it allows me to see what their great good is and to learn. So the Dale Carnegie book works phenomenally in business and in hospitality.
That is awesome. I'm the same as you, Josh. I only have one younger sister. So the idea of having 9 other siblings is is absolutely crazy to me. And I can imagine, like, if I told my mom that you guys, they have 10 children, she would probably be like, well, it's not me.
Right.
Right,
So,
right.
I mean, how did that affect, as you were growing your business? I'm just so curious about how you guys found that balance and how you continue to find it. I know you just touched on it too. Just like whatever you guys can offer to people who want to be raising that big family and be raising their business as well.
Not many people get to do what we've been privileged. Not everybody, we have so many friends that struggle with being able to have children. So we never really put it out there like as a negative so we're just grateful that it happened for us. The big thing that I think as a business leader, and Melanie can tell you this, she was saying it, I think a second ago, when you have a foundation of a family and someone you can trust, some people use masterminds or good friendships, you have a rock, and then you can, set a plan and a goal, but you have a home base, you have a rock, you have a lot of stability emotionally. I think that is a big blessing for us with doing business, is that we get to give it all 100% on the field like a football team. But at the end of the day, we're still loved at home. So there is probably a good stabilizing force to a big family. But if you're the kid in the big family, you might think, honest to God, our kids, maybe they're special this way, but they're grateful for being part of a big family. And they talk about it a lot.
That's awesome.
Especially coronavirus. I didn't even realize this because we had a lot of kids, that poor children sometimes have been in super isolation. So ours aren't. And that's been pretty healthy for them.
That's great. Yeah, I'm sure you guys are the kind of parents that I think would be awesome to have as teachers during this time, especially just in general. I think you guys, I can feel your heart through the screen, if that makes any sense. And I can tell that, your kids seem really, really lucky to have you two.
Oh man, what a blessing. Thank you.
As pillars to look up to.
Wow.
So yeah, of course. I can definitely just tell. I love the way that you guys run your business and have stuck together through all of it and have continued to let, humanity just be your guide. I really love that. So the last question, as we wind down, the last couple of questions I have, one of them is actually one that we ask all of our guests that come on the podcast. We basically ask, beyond investing, what are your keys, Josh, Melanie, for either both of you or for each of you individually? What do you think your keys are to building wealth and unlocking your personal potential, maintaining life balance, finding that financial freedom?
All right. So just a quick plug. We talk about it all the time on the show that I get to be a part of, called Capital Hacking. And this is literally what we dedicate a couple shows a week to. And that is, what great habits can you put in your life? What mindsets are you living by right now that you could question? And is capital really just money, or do we create the power to achieve? And so human capital, we talk about a lot. What I'm trying to tell you is that we try to live a very reflective life about how to set goals, how to set our course, and deal with struggles as part of it, as actually, Melanie, you have that fun saying where if you're not
failing, you're not trying. It was something that is more, I think Josh was a little bit, he's the risk taker naturally. And it was kind of like already part of his fibers. But for me, it's something I've learned. This is part of the journey. And so especially, it was really hitting me when we saw Robert Kiyosaki. We spent a week with him on a cruise, and he over and over again, he just kept saying that. And I feel like that was the message I needed to hear. And that's kind of been like, you learn the most when you fail or when you have struggle. And so not to be afraid of that, and to just look for opportunities and to be okay with the learning process.
That's really well said.
Yeah, really. That's currently one of my 20s existential fears that I have all the time. So it was very nice to hear that from someone who has found that success. So thanks for sharing that, guys. And thanks for coming on today, Josh and Melanie, and for this enriching discussion. I really feel like I could sit and talk to you guys for hours. We can plan my future wedding. Let's hope it happens.
That would be so much fun.
But I can't wait to share this with our listeners. And the last question I do have, and I know you guys have so many resources, so I want people to be able to find out, how can they reach you? Can you provide your website, your social media that listeners can get to, your podcast? I know you touched on Heart to Heart and Capital Hacking, just ways people can get in touch with you from this.
To make it easy on everyone, we'll give you a few ways, but the easiest might be whatever you heard us say that you want. We have the downloadable book from Melanie, all those types of things. Just hit accountableequity.com. There's a contact form, and just write in there, I want this, I would like this, or I heard them say that. So accountableequity.com is the best way for us to all collaborate and learn together. We have a Learn and Grow registration. You can actually just go ahead and do it. You don't have to be an investor. There's usually 50-50. Feel free to sign right up right now on the website. Those are good. And then please, if you are inclined to purchase a cool book for charity called Coronavirus Collective on Amazon, we would love for you to grab it. Otherwise, we'll send you Melanie's section as a gift.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much. Again, I truly appreciate you coming on, and I wish you guys the best of luck with everything and with wedding season coming up. So tune in next week to hear from more of our experts who've paved their road to financial freedom, or call CamaPlan today to learn more about how you can start to gain control of your future wealth. Thanks, guys.